Welcome to another virtual Live Talks Los Angeles event. We welcome to our screen Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue. Marlo is an
Hey,
award-winning actor, author, and activist, 4 Emmy Awards, a Peabody, a Golden Globe, and a Grammy, and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Obama. Phil is a writer, producer, journalist, and a pioneer who revolutionized the talk show format. The Donahue Show has been honored with 20 Emmy Awards, and he was also awarded a Peabody. First, congratulations on 40 years of marriage.
That's our biggest accomplishment.
I guess a good place to start would be, how did you guys meet?
You could take that one, honey.
on the Donahue Show. What could be more romantic than that? I was in the minute I saw her in the green room. I mean, she was, first of all, I mean, the eyes, everything. She was very, very pretty, and I noticed that. And then she got up, and I, of course, followed her down the hallway on the way to the studio. And, she just was from all sides, very sexy. And
That's always a good start.
that's called a bad thought in Catholic theology.
But, I think it's interesting that Phil mentioned that because a lot of couples talked about when they first saw each other, when they first met, they had this hormonal chemical reaction to each other. And that happens to a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to last forever, but it's a good place to start and build from. And for some people, they do build from that. And for some others, it burns out. It didn't have enough other things going for it.
But it's amazing how many thought that their life would be spent with this person they just met.
Yeah.
Amazing, really.
I know. Billy Crystal said he saw Janice walk across the beach when they were like 17, 18 years old. And she had on a pink bikini. And he said to his friend, I'm going to marry that girl. I mean, so many people saw each other and said, that's the one for me. Jamie Lee Curtis saw Chris Guest on the cover of a Rolling Stone interview. And he was one of like 4 guys. And she said to her friend, I'm going to marry him. It's amazing, that people, even from a photograph, see something and it touches their heart or their hormones or something.
Well, before we get too far into the couples you talked about, I really want to learn more about when you guys first met. So, Marlo, what was your first reaction when you heard or were aware that Phil was interested in you?
Well, it was before he was even interested in me. When he came into the green room to shake my hand and to get kind of warm up before the interview, I really felt a little pitter pat right away. I've always said it was like one of those slow motion shampoo commercials. The minute I saw him, the blue eyes, the white hair, I went, oh man, I was very smitten with him right away. And then he said to me, I'd like to talk about your mother. Would that be okay? And I thought, my mother? My famous father, Danny Thomas, was always the person people wanted to talk about in terms of my family. So I was quite impressed that he wanted to talk about my mom. And that's just the kind of person he is, Johnny Carson never wanted to talk about my mother. So I was impressed with that. And then we got on the air and our whatever was going on with us chemically just caught fire. And then he asked me to dinner the next night and we just grew from there.
I'd like to know what it was like when you first met his children.
Well, they were darling. I mean, they were all boys, which was striking. And they were very sweet to me. I had the advantage that they had known about the Free to Be You and Me album I had done for kids years before. So I wasn't a complete, alien. They knew my voice. They knew who I was. That was kind of a leg up. And but in a way it was scary because I was a single woman, famously single, living alone with my 2 dogs in Los Angeles. And I had never been with a man with children before. And this wasn't just a child. This was 4 boys that lived with him. He was raising his 4 sons on his own, which was very impressive to me that he could do that and that he did do it so well. And And they were very cute guys. I have good relationships with all of them. In fact, my oldest stepson, Michael, and his wife, Reed, their children, their first boy was born 23 years ago. And they came to me and said, we don't want you to be the step anything to this child. We want you to be this boy's godmother. And that meant so much to me, really, because it's an odd job being a step parent. You know, it's kind of rewarding, but kind of thankless. And, you know, it's a little tricky. And to be loved by them, it's a great accomplishment to me.
I learned a lot when we started to date and then got married, and I've been learning ever since. I mean, she's got something to say, and it's always good for me to take it down and think about it. So I'm certainly a different person since I've met her.
Oh, and, I am too.
You know, by the way, I think, thanks to Marlo, I think that marriage got easier as the years went by. I don't know if that's true with everybody, but it certainly is true with me. I mean, first of all, I used to be a very jealous fellow. And now, you know, as the years went by, I became in less and less. And I began to realize what a burden that is. I mean, it's an unnecessary expenditure of energy. And I finally have reached that plateau.
Well, I think it takes some years to, when Phil says it gets easier, I think it gets easier because you let go of some things. You know, I want to make him do this, I want her to do that. You know, you that isn't going to work. The whole idea of trying to change somebody isn't going to work. What's most important is that you learn to accommodate the other person, accommodate their differences. They're never going to be you, and you're never going to be them. So once you kind of get into that groove and say, okay, this is a person who is different from me, and that's okay. And I don't have to try to get them to be more like me. I have to accommodate who they are. And I think that's a real secret to a happy marriage.
And the people who lasted long are the people who somehow had an awareness of the fact that two people living together forever is not an easy commitment. If, in other words, they seem to be aware of the nature of a lifelong relationship, and it helped them anticipate problems and deal with them in more effective ways.
And they worked on it. A lot of them were in couples therapy. They found ways in which to make it better. I like what Kira Sedgwick said. She said, there is no plan B. You need to go into marriage without looking for an escape route, without looking for the exit sign. And that's a commitment. A lot of marriages fail after 5 years, 6 years, 3 years, whatever, because the people just, they run, they get scared and run when it gets hard.
One quick question back to that first meeting, Phil. Speaking of things you had to say, when you delivered the message to your sons that Marlo has come into your life or is about to come into your life, what did you tell them? What did you tell your boys?
What? I don't know the answer to that.
Wow, that's a very good question. Well, I was not, I just prayed that, you know, they would be accepting and polite and courteous and all the things that parents long for. And one of the nicest things that, who was it said, we like it when you're here because when you're here, Dad
is calmer, has less spazzes. Michael, his oldest son, said, we like it when you're here because Dad has less spazzes when you're here.
Yeah, spaz, 2 Z's.
So I think my presence was calming to him, or else he was just on his best behavior because I was there. But he didn't, he didn't take off after the kids as much, when I was around. So they liked that.
So what triggered doing this book? Did friends come to you and say, how is it you guys have stayed married for 40 years? What triggered the idea to do the book? The book, again, is What makes a marriage last? 40 celebrated couples share with us the secrets to a happy life.
Well, our friends don't necessarily come to us, but a lot of people have asked us, and interviewers and so forth, and we've never really known what the answer is. What is the secret to a happy marriage? And we wanted to do this as a kind of a celebration of our 40th anniversary that's coming up on May 21st. We thought it would be so interesting to find out, well, what is the secret sauce? And so we decided to interview all these couples, and little by little, we found out a lot of things that they did and who they were. And also it reminded us of the things that we have in our life. We have these little rituals of tell about a PHM.
Well,
No, because I think it's an interesting
well,
thing.
it is, because Marlo says out loud when she's feeling great, you know. She calls it a PHM.
Well, so do you.
Yeah, I do now.
Yeah.
Perfectly happy moment. So it's kind of a sharing of a wonderful feeling right at the moment that it happened.
And it's a celebration. You know, most people don't celebrate life very much. And one of the things we've always done, I mean, we did that PHM before we were married. When something was beautiful, like a beautiful sunset, or we were just together having a glass of wine on the porch and just talking. And one of us would say to the other one, you know, this is such a lovely moment, such a perfectly happy moment. So it came to be a sort of code. And I love what Allie Wentworth said. She's married to George Stephanopoulos. And she said when George's contract was renewed, she and her daughters made a cake and they put M&Ms on top of it, and, you know, and had a party with their dad and the four of them to celebrate George's contract renewal. That's such a loving thing to do. But again, it's about celebration. You know, we celebrate our work. We're very happy if we get an award, if our show does well, whatever it is. But how much do we celebrate our lives? And not just on our anniversary, but throughout the year, daily. What's going on that you can say, wow, good for us, good for you, that was great, you know, that kind of thing.
I wrote a I guess it's an autobiography. It seems a long time ago. And the first observation I made in the book, I said, I wish as a parent that when my kids pleased me, I would have told them that. You know, I mean, we were all raised, I shouldn't say all of us, but in my world, most of us were raised with the idea that life is tough, you've got to be strong, and, you know, you had to
be tough on the kids.
You had to be very tough on the kids,
right,
or else they're going to get eaten up by an angry world. And that was a pretty negative way to raise a child.
But I think people do that in marriage too. They don't spend the time promoting what the other person has done well. And I think one of the things that's been good in our marriage is because we both work in different fields, we're able to see what the other one is doing and say, wow, that was great that you did that. And also, even we do it socially. For example, we'll come home from a party and I'll say to Phil, oh God, I shouldn't have said that. I said that thing and that I'm embarrassed. I just shouldn't have said it. And he'll say to me, oh no, it was charming what you said. Everybody loved it. In other words, he builds me back up when I'm feeling anxious or feeling that I did something incorrect, which is so great to have somebody be your cheerleader, you know, rather than say, yeah, you shouldn't have done that, you know, or even say to you, why did you say that thing at that party? I don't get that. We don't do that with each other. We help each other.
After all these years, I'm surprised that this is your first collaborative project. Did you actively avoid collaborating? And
you could take that one.
Yes.
We did.
The answer to that question is yes. I mean, I didn't know how we got a little more confidence in joint projects as the years went by. And finally, after
39 years.
Yeah. After almost 40 years, we said, all right, let's see how this works. And
I think we were afraid too, because we're both type A personalities. And I kind of thought, I don't want to be arguing with him about which way something should go. And I think we both felt that. We have such a good time together. Why put business in the middle of it? But we've learned to negotiate so much else that by now it was easy. We're very different personalities. I mean, tell the story about when we had Elton John and the assistant said we only had 30 minutes. We were used to always having like an hour, 2 hours, 2 hours and a half with each couple. And the assistant—
Marlo went totally panicked. What was the time we were going to have?
30 minutes. 30 minutes. I mean, that's no time at all.
30 minutes. I can't possibly. And I said, don't worry. When they get into it, they're going to want more than 30 minutes.
And then he went and turned the baseball game on. We were in Toronto to interview them. Phil went and turned the baseball game on, and I got a pad out and quickly made about 10 questions. If I had 10 questions, like a rapid fire question and answer, because I didn't want to take the time to have real questions and answers, because if we only had 30 minutes, we would end up with nothing. We wouldn't have a chapter. So I went into complete panic mode. And I'm looking at him watching the ball game, and I said, I can't believe this. Aren't you going to help me with this? He said, oh, trust me. They're not going to stop us after 30 minutes. Well, he was right. I mean, I did my little rapid questions. We got into the hotel room. We were staying in the same hotel. We got into their hotel suite, and we started, and we were there for an hour and a half. But that's our different personality. I go into panic mode, and he goes into cool it mode, which is good. I mean, we're not the same person at all.
Yeah, and after actually almost 2 hours of yakking,
yeah,
I would say, I'm sorry, but we do have to leave. And that always got a laugh. So this was a very enjoyable experience for us. I mean, I would wish it on anybody I care about. I mean, it's a wonderful, imagine you get to see the inside of celebrity houses, how they decorated, what kind of
what they served us.
Yeah, right. That was totally unexpected. We got plates of olives and crackers and
cheese and meats, and then some people, we won't say who, said, "Would you like a glass of water?" And then somebody else, Tony Sherwood, Brooke Adams, and Judge Judy and Judge Jerry put out huge spreads of food. It was interesting to see the different kinds of hospitality. Mehmet Oz had a bottle of wine. I mean, it was interesting in every way, the people's different way of approaching this. But I'll say this, I think the reason why the book is so good and so intimate is that it was like a double date. Phil had said to me before we started, he said, I'm not talking about our marriage. And I said, okay, we don't have to. But what happened?
Well, I learned a lot about my wife the minute we started this project. I learned things about Marlo, and how long had we been married when we started the book?
Well, 30, almost 39 years, yeah.
So we would recommend it for any married couple.
Well, if you sit down with another couple just to talk about marriage, which is, people don't do that. When you go to dinner with a friend, another couple, you don't spend 2 hours talking about your marriage. It may come up once or twice, but whatever. But the whole topic was marriage. So when they would talk and then we would say something to make them say something, it became a real double date conversation.
So I learned a lot about Marlo. Listening to her answer, they were questioning us.
Yes, exactly. And that was fun. And it was fun to hear Phil say, I've always had a hard time being, saying publicly, I love you or something. And I just thought that was so sweet when you said that. That was so nice.
Yeah. That's very Irish. Um, uh, my favorite
Oh, Frank
Irish,
McCord.
Frank McCord, who is probably the best chronicler of all things Irish, makes the point that
In Angela's Ashes, he said something
right.
like, I forgot how it went, but he said in America, people talk about, they can say, I love you, Dad, and they can say, but
Yeah.
in Ireland, you can only say that you love a dog
Or horses that win.
or horses that win, or you're considered soft in the head.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Good memory.
Yeah.
Well done.
So Phil said, he said, I think I couldn't say I love you out loud because I didn't want to appear to be soft in the head. But now he says it. Go ahead, you can say it.
I love you, Marlo.
I have a question for you. You know, people meet and there's a hearts aflutter and there's a courtship and you are in love and you get married and the relationship continues. Do you feel like you've been always in love? Are you always in love? Do you always feel in love in your relationship?
I do. I mean, I get mad at him and I want to kill him, but I know I love him. I mean, that's for sure. And I think Alan Alda said an interesting thing, that when he's in the middle of an argument with his wife, Arlene, and they've been married for 60 years and have a great marriage. Everybody should have that marriage. It's a great marriage. But he said they'll be in the middle of a fight and he'll say to himself, what am I doing? Why am I bringing such anger to this person here? This is not a stranger. This is the person I love more than anything in the world. And it stops him. He's able to actually say to himself in the middle of an angry moment, this is wrong. I don't want to do this.
I had Billy Graham on the show once, and I said to him, did you ever think about getting a divorce? He said, never. Murder, yes, but never a divorce. So,
and I think that, yeah, I think if you lose sight of the fact that you love somebody in an argument or in a stalemate of some kind, I think that could be a problem. I think that's dropping a big important stitch.
So I have a question about, these couples. I'm guessing you knew some of them and some of them you just cold reached out to. What was the difference between interviewing people you knew versus people you did not know?
well, you know what? I was very encouraged and surprised. We were really welcomed into their homes.
They weren't scared. They weren't guarded as we thought they'd be.
No, and it's like almost like we've waited a long time to talk about our marriage, and finally we have the chance.
Some people were afraid that we'd be peeking under the covers, and we said Phil and I, it was a long process. First, Phil and I would speak to them on the phone and tell them what the book was about and that we hoped that they would take part in it. And then we made it clear that, we're not looking for sex secrets. We're not going to be peeking under the covers, though some of them talked about sexuality, of course. But I think also if they didn't know us and we didn't know them, we knew each other's reputations. So, and also we're not reporters. They knew we weren't coming in to get a gotcha. And because we spoke about our own marriage too, it made the relationship, the conversation more fluid. Because, for example, in this interview right now, you're asking us all the questions. When we did ours, they really weren't interviews. They were conversations.
Right.
They were 2.5 hour conversations over a meal or over cheese and crackers or whatever in somebody's home. It was
a flow.
One
thing led to another.
Right.
And Marlo made a very, very important contribution to this because she was honest about us and it kind of opened the door for them. I was amazed at how many of our couples, almost after they got over the original looking us over, what is this? They were very candid, right. And they seemed to welcome the opportunity to talk about their marriage.
To talk it out, yeah. I mean, Jesse Jackson's wife, Jackie Jackson, we were talking about family and stuff. And at one point she said, well, I have 5 children and the Reverend has 6. The Reverend Jesse Jackson. And turns out that
he had
an affair.
Yeah.
And they had to come back from that. And he had a baby with this woman who he provided for. But she had to come back from that. And Kira Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon had to come back from the fact that they lost all their savings, 30 years of savings, to Bernie Madoff. So there are a lot of these couples had to come back from strife, and they stuck it out and held on to each other and got through it, as opposed to blaming the other person and not getting through it. Because the minute you start blaming people, you've lost.
I
don't know if we answered your question, but that's what we went with it.
No, I'm just going to build on that a little bit. And in the case of Reverend Jackson, clearly forgiveness was important in sustaining a marriage. Could you talk about the importance of forgiveness, and in what ways have you forgiven each other over the years?
Well, I think one of the major things we've done in terms of forgiveness is forgive ourselves. Phil has a lot of guilt about his kids. He should have done this, he should have done that. I have a lot of guilt about my family, that I could have done this, or I have a guilt that I should have done something for him when he needed it and I didn't do it. So a lot of it, I think, is forgiving yourself for where you haven't met the mark. But
I interviewed, God knows who said this. How many shows did I do? 4,000 or
6,000 actually.
6,000. And some behaviorist, somebody who committed their lives to understanding human behavior, what provokes it. And it was a he, and he said, guilt is a waste of time. And that hit me big.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, it is. What does it produce?
Nothing.
Nothing but.
But we've not ever done anything to each other that demanded a huge forgiveness. But when you have a fight about something, well, you didn't do something I asked you to do, or you didn't call so-and-so, whatever it is, just not to hang on to it. I think people don't forgive even the slightest things. And I don't understand that, of not talking to each other for 3 days, or going to sleep in another room, not speaking. We've not ever done that. And we've pouted, slammed a door.
I'm good at that.
He's very good at pouting and leaving the room. And I kind of chase him to make a conversation happen. But I think, so that's how we get back to forgiveness, is to say, okay, I admit it. Ted Danson said he owns up to it. He's been married 3 times, and Mary Steenburgen, his wife, has been married twice. And they have a terrific marriage. They're married over 30 years. But I said to Ted, well, how did you think this would be any different? And he said he'd learned to own up to what he does wrong and to not blame the other person. And she said the same thing, that they'd learned that from their other marriages, that you own up to your own mistakes. And you don't say to the other person, I'm sorry if I hurt you, which is baloney.
Yeah, that's a non-apology.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I hurt you. I did hurt you. I can see you're hurt. So you should say, I'm sorry I hurt you. And I did it on purpose. I did it to be mean, or I was thoughtless, or whatever. But it's not about, you did this, so I did that. That's a cycle that never gets resolved. It never makes anybody happy. That's an important tool to say, this is what I did. I shouldn't have done it. And I've gotten good at that. I didn't used to be very good at that. But I now do say to Phil, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. And it wasn't your fault. It was my fault. I said it. And I think I learned that from Ted Danson. There's a lot of these things aren't really tips. This really isn't an advice book. I think when we set out to do it, we kind of thought we were creating a how-to book, but we realized it's really a what book. What do people do when certain things happen. What happened and what did they do? And what kept them together? What made the marriage last? When so many people just say, wow, this is hard. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And Chris Guest said that he knows, he and Jamie Lee Curtis have married like 36 years, and they also have a great marriage. And they're completely separate, and completely, different. Jamie said, our marriage is based on two people being very, 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 very different, complete opposites. But that marriage works for them. And I forgot my point. Well, anyway, I'm sure you'll remember it. There's so many people.
I have a question. So the average person walks into a bookstore, picks up this book. Question is, what makes a marriage last? Flips the back, and it's a name of celebrities. So what is your answer to someone who might say, how does all this translate to someone who's not a celebrity?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Whether you're a gay couple or a heterosexual couple or whoever you are, whether you're famous or you're not famous, it all comes down to two people holding hands and making a promise that is completely audacious, that you will be together for as long as you both shall live. That's a pretty audacious promise. And in order to make that promise, there are some certain things that one must do. And one of them is not have a plan B. The other one is don't marry potential. John McEnroe's wife, Patti Smith, said so many of her girlfriends say, oh, this guy has such great potential. And Patti said, don't marry potential. Marry the person, because that's who you're going to have. You're not going to have somebody who's going to change into something you dreamed that they have potential of becoming. And also the idea that this person is never going to be you, and you're never going to be them. So get used to accommodating another human being who is not you.
Yeah.
So
you'll go to the grave trying to change your spouse.
Right.
And I don't know, just before you move on to your eternal reward, you'll be saying, golly, she didn't change at all. Or it's been difficult. Don't wear yourself out trying to achieve unrealistic goals.
Well, don't try to change the other person. Accommodate to their differences. I'm a person who panics in a situation and he calms me down. He gets angry at certain situations, and you've often said that I soothe your anger when you get that way.
Right, I'm the wild beast in the house.
No, but when you get angry, you said to me often that I soothe your anger. So that's what you do, rather than when he gets angry, I get angry. That isn't going to work. When I panic, if he panics, that wouldn't work. It's accommodating the other person. And it really doesn't matter whether you're famous or not famous. And the reason I said about gay or not gay is because a lot of people think that gay people somehow have a different set of issues, and they really don't. It's still the same old stuff. Are you telling me the truth? Are you true to me? Do you have my back? That's what it's about. Do you have my back? Can I count on you in a pinch? Will you be a team player with me on this? Or will I have to drag the red wagon up the hill? Everybody needs to know that they're with a person who's got their back and wants to help them make it to their dream. And I think all of the marriages that we spoke to, each person was invested in the other person's dream. And one of my favorite stories about that with me and Phil is I was asked to do the national company of 6 Degrees of Separation. And I loved that part. I really wanted to do it. And Jerry Zaks, the original director, was going to direct it, and it was going to be under the auspices of LA, of the Lincoln Center. But it meant an 8-month tour, which was going to be very hard on us, traveling, trying to get back and forth to each other. So as much as I wanted to do it, I was afraid of what it might do to our marriage. And so Phil and I sat down and I said, what do you think? And he said, well, if I needed this opportunity as much as you do, I'd do it. And that made me realize I could trust him. I could trust him with my head, that he wouldn't give me advice that would satisfy him. He gave me advice that would be good for me. And I've had so many friends, male and female, tell me that later after their marriages were over, they realized that their spouse did not advise them as to what would be the best thing for them, but what would be most convenient for them. And that's a very big thing. That's trust at its really deepest level.
So difficult times can really test marriages, and this pandemic is testing a lot of marriages. People are staying home. Maybe the home is not big enough to accommodate two people. People are crowding. How are you guys handling that? And any advice you would give couples that are at home struggling with the pressures of the pandemic?
Well, I would tell the men that the downy goes in the rinse cycle,
It goes
and
in the bounce.
the bounce goes in the dryer.
These are things we've learned.
Honestly, I was embarrassed. I didn't know which was the dryer and which was the washing machine. I mean, they're stacked.
And they both have a round door.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was but I think mostly what we've been able to do is find our separate corners to do our work. You know, Phil has the work that he's doing on his computer near his television set for the news and so forth. And I have my little area where I have my computer and I can do my work. So we're lucky to have separate spaces within our apartment. We don't have a big house, but we have an apartment, but we're able to have our separate spaces. And we've rather enjoyed making meals together because that's not something we do. We have a housekeeper ordinarily. And that's been interesting. We don't usually have 3 meals a day unless we're on vacation. So we've enjoyed that. And we have other what other things do we do? Popcorn.
Popcorn for the movies.
We've been watching movies and we're making popcorn.
Right.
So we're kind of taking advantage of having some time together because we don't usually have this kind of time, you know, through the day. So we're not. I think when we have a disagreement or something, because we're cooped up and there's nobody else here as a buffer, we are quicker to get over it. We're quicker to say, or to recognize each of us to say to each other, I'm sorry I said that, or don't mind me today, I'm feeling testy.
Right.
I'm feeling a little crabby today. Because we're going to be spending the whole day together, we kind of tell the other one, I'm a little grouchy today. So, you know, give me a little forgiveness here, right?
And it's a reminder that your spouse is going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not going to change.
Right.
At least we realize now, for a long term. So that awareness somehow, you know, it makes arguing a waste of time.
But I do think there's a key there that we've learned that we didn't have before, which is to sort of announce if you're kind of in a bad mood. And you can be because, you know, you're having difficulty with the Zoom and you can't figure out how to get a message to somebody. And, you know, our usual life is not here. We can't go outside. We can't go meet people. So there's a little bit of more tension in your own life, but with what you do. And to be able to say to the other person, you know what, I am really feeling testy today. I think that's a very smart thing to be able to do, rather than snap at somebody and then they snap back, and before you know it, you're having an argument when it wasn't even necessary. What you're feeling isn't about that person. You're ready to admit, I'm crabby today, and it has nothing to do with you. That's good. That's a new thing that I think we've learned by being quarantined together.
All right, let's do some of the audience questions that came in. A lady writes, I haven't read the book, but one couple in particular got my attention, James Carville and Mary Madeline. I know I don't have to agree with everything my husband says or believes in, but their differences seem so fundamental. How does that marriage work?
Very good. That's my question. And it's funny, you know, I thought that would be the whole subject of the whole interview, and it wasn't. I think because it was obvious they're fine. Don't worry about them. And I think that, you know, this is a political difference they have.
Right.
And there really is real love between the two of them. What did he say?
Oh, he said, when you go around and around on an issue and you can't resolve it, just kick that can down the road. And that's now become our favorite thing to say to each other.
Right. And there's a lot of cans in our foyer.
That's right. And he said, and behind every successful marriage is a whole line of cans. But what Phil said too is an interesting point. He said, we don't agree on politics at all, but that's the thing we don't agree on. He said, but we agree on how we love our children. We agree on how we socialize. We agree on our family. We agree about a lot of things. We agree on hiking together. There's so many things that we like to do together. Politics is one of the things we do, and we don't agree on that. So I think the answer to this person's question is you don't have to agree on everything, and don't try to make the other person be you, which is what I thought was something that Judy Vior said. He'll never be you, and you'll never be him. Allow the other person their differences and accommodate them and say, okay, that's a place where we're just not the same.
Right.
Phil can watch news all day. You can put it on at 8 a.m. and watch it till 8 p.m. I can take it, I want to watch, get what's the daily news. Okay, I've got that and I'm gone. But he is so fascinated by everybody's point of view and everybody's opinion. He's a journalist. That's what excites him.
Well, I was fired from MSNBC.
For being against the Iraq War, which is a noble thing.
It was really a political hit. And I am totally fascinated with the people the person who replaced me.
Well, to see them now become so liberal when they were so conservative at the beginning. Chris Matthews and those guys were all for the Iraq War, and Phil was against the Iraq War. Then little by little, they started saying that they were against the war, but they weren't against the war when they were fired. Yeah. But the important thing is that that's what he likes to do. I like to go to the theater, though I don't know if I'll ever get to the theater again right now, but I like to go to the theater. I like to see plays. I like to go to comedy clubs. And so we have to accommodate each other for that. I can't drag him from the news all day. And he does go to the theater with me and accommodate each other's differences and enjoy the fact that they enjoy that.
Well, I'm lucky, though. I mean, for a guy who's been fired, I've had a very interesting life.
You did 29 straight years. Nobody's good sad songs for you.
Right.
But I mean, it's hard, as people will tell you who tell the truth. It's very hard to stand up for the truth as you see it, which is why Phil has 20 Emmys and a Peabody Award and all, because he has been a journalist, and he fought against that war when nobody else was. So anyway, I think, what was your question? I forgot it.
Oh, people politically with different ideologies.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, politically, we're pretty much on the same page. But I think the question your audience person asked is a very good one. You don't agree with your husband on everything. No, you won't. And thank God, who wants to marry the same person? I think that's what's made my life with my husband interesting, because he does think differently about many things, but also he's interested in things that I'm not as interested in as he is. I mean, this is a guy who'll read an entire book on DNA, a book like that thick. We'll go to the beach together, and I'm reading some novel or some comedy book, and he's reading a book this thick on DNA. That's who he is. I don't want to read that book, but I want to know about it. So he'll, over lunch, read me a paragraph or two, and that's interesting. I think it's interesting to be different from each other.
Here's another question. A lady says, I see you have former President Carter and Rosalind Carter in your book, who have been married for, I think, over 70 years.
Yeah,
what
74.
was interviewing them like, and what do you think is their secret to success?
Well, I said to her in the middle of the interview, I said, first of all, we're in Atlanta.
Right.
Very close. Certainly, they grew up in the Bible Belt, and they seem to fail that. First of all, they read the Bible to each other every night before they go to sleep.
In Spanish.
Yeah.
They learned how to speak Spanish, and they read the Bible to each other. And even when they're traveling, they have the same text, so that they're reading the same text to themselves, no matter where they are. But I thought what was tell him what Jimmy said about writing a book together. That he and Rosalind had a fight about the book.
Yeah, and they were honest about talking about that.
Right. Yeah.
So we flew all the way to Atlanta to interview a long married couple, and they had a fight on our show. And I just thought that was so honest.
Yeah.
And no doubt they love each other. That marriage will last forever.
And it has lasted forever. But he said when they wrote the book together, he would write his really fast. He's written like 37 books himself, but he would write his chapter in an afternoon, and he'd turn it in to Rosalind, and she would edit it, and then she would turn in her chapter to him. And he said it was like the tablets had come from heaven in stone. You couldn't touch it. And so they had these fights about it, and they eventually stopped writing the book, and then their publisher got them back together, and they finished it. But he said of all the hardships in our life, writing a book together is the only thing that brought us to the brink of divorce. So you guys be careful, he said.
I have another question. A gentleman says, success is a good thing, but I feel it can get in the way of a marriage. And what I mean is when success comes in a much bigger way to one person in the relationship after they've been for a while. Did any of the couples you interviewed deal with that? Was that an issue?
Kira Sedgwick held off her career while her husband, Kevin, has a fantastic career, because she felt that she really needed to be home for the children. So she got into her career much later. Tony Shalhoub and his wife, Brooke Adams, she was a big star. She was the star of Heidi Chronicles, and he had a lesser part. And they talked about the fact that today he's the star, and she does not really have a career that's booming, and how they've had to adjust to that. She said, we used to go out and everybody would ask for my autograph. Now we go out and everybody asks for Tony's autograph. But she's now become more of a painter. She's a wonderful actress, and she's also a wonderful painter. She showed us a lot of her paintings. But they dealt with the seesaw of careers that have their ups and downs, and now Tony's is up and hers is not so up. But they love each other. They have a terrific marriage, and they have adjusted to those differences.
Alan Alda used to fly home from Los Angeles.
Fly from Los Angeles and his work to home. Yeah.
Yeah, from Los Angeles every weekend. And he'd fly back on Sunday night and be there ready to, go to the makeup room for whatever shoot was scheduled for MASH. And, Arlene never had any doubt that he loved her and that he was loyal to her. I mean, that's a long way that's a red eye.
And also Arlene Alda was very forthcoming about the fact that Alan's success was taking off, and she felt that she was becoming invisible, that the children were going to school, their 3 daughters were going to school. Alan was working continuously now, and she didn't know who she was. And she went to a therapist, and the therapist acknowledged with her that, yes, she was at a crossroads in her life. And then she took up photography, and now she's done something like 30 books. She's a terrific photographer, very close friends of ours. And she's also written books about the Bronx and other subjects, but she found her voice. And that's a problem that a lot of women, including my mother, have, which is, when do you pick yourself up again after getting the family on its feet and the husband is working, and am I invisible? And Arlene talked about that, and I thought it was a great addition to the book, because it is something that couples go through.
I have a question from someone who says, I haven't read the book yet, but I see that you interviewed Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone. I read his memoir, and I think they are the most down-to-earth people. What was interviewing them like?
Well, you want to take that?
Well, you know, the caller is right, spot on, because they are down to earth people.
And funny. I mean, they make each other laugh. She said, to this day, he will moon her. She'll turn around and there he'll be mooning her. I mean, they look forward to getting the other one to laugh. And they said a wonderful thing, that a laugh, a really good laugh, can add 3 months to your life. So sometimes if they're having a big laugh, one of them will say, oh, that's 6 months. The idea that laughter, that kind of joy, that kind of exuberance actually adds to your life. And boy, do I believe in that. I mean, I'm the daughter of a comedian, and I grew up around comedy. And I do find that one of the reasons why I like to go to comedy clubs. I love to be around comedy and laughter. I want it in my life. I want it in our marriage. We watch comedy movies since we've been locked up here. We make popcorn at night and watch old Mel Brooks movies and Woody Allen movies and Elaine May movies, just to have some fun, to get away from the sad news about people sick and people dying.
Right.
You need to get away from it. And
laughter is a key ingredient.
It really is.
For living with one other person.
It really
for
is.
Life.
Right.
I will say to Marlo is, pretty well informed in the comedy life, having been raised by a father who was an iconic comic figure of the 20th century. And she would grade the joke she told, or something that she did. And I would say, well, that's the lounge. That's not the main room. So
he's become the critic now.
Yeah. And her father was the first star of the Sands Hotel.
That's right. I didn't know you remember that.
So, yeah. So she knew stand-up, and she
that's
was
why
good at it.
It was fun to interview Billy Crystal and Ray Romano and Melissa and Ben, people who made laughter a part of their lives, and they all talked about the fact that it's the laughter in their marriage as well as in their careers that are a very big part of the balance of their life. Melissa said in the book, she said, I don't know how people get through a marriage without goofiness, without silliness.
I don't either.
You got to be silly. You got to be goofy. You got to put a funny hat on and make the other one laugh. The idea that you want to do that is a real tool. It's a cushion. Laughter is a cushion of life.
And it's underrated. Honestly, I don't think people appreciate that.
How much we need it.
Yeah, and how, and I think both members of the relationship get better at it as it goes on.
Right.
I pick up great notes from Marlo on how to get a laugh, for example.
Yeah,
and what's funny.
Yeah, I'll say, don't start it that way. Start it this way. You got to set up the joke. I adore comedy. It's just the best.
Just a couple more questions. And you alluded to this a little bit. But the lady asks, marriage is work, and that work sometimes involves the help of counseling or therapy. Of the people you interviewed, were any open about that? Could you share some of that?
Yes. Well, we didn't we talk about Ron and Cheryl?
Yep.
And Brian and Robin all were in therapy, and others. We have not been in couples therapy, but who else was in couples therapy? I'm trying to remember now. I don't.
If you don't remember, I can't.
I know. Well, those two for sure, and they use it. I mean, David Burka and Neil Patrick Harris have a weekly appointment with a couples therapist, not because they've got a big problem that has to be discussed every week, because they feel that's a good place to just iron out whatever they're going through and get an interpreter.
Yeah. And it's an example of, there are relationships out there in which the participants take that relationship seriously.
Right.
I mean, they don't want any part of divorce. And I mean, sort of like Billy Graham, divorce, never. Murder, yes. So it makes you think, at least it did for me, it makes you realize that a lot of people who gave up and got divorced didn't have to. It wasn't necessary. If you just got past that first
Hurdle,
bump in the road, you're much better off. Staying is a lot healthier than leaving.
right. And you're only going to make the same mistake again anyway. That's the interesting thing. I watch people do it. I watch friends of mine go through one man or one woman at a time, and it's always the same situation. Why is that? Why do they, have the same kind of abusiveness or the same kind of mistrust or the same problem over and over, to solve it. And that's what I've respected about Ted Danson and Mary Steenburgen. And they figured out what was wrong with them, and they brought a better them to the relationship. And that's what I think we all have to do. Work on yourself. Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner said it also. You work your own side of the street, and then you'll be more equipped to work with the other person. But you can't expect, I don't know if I said this already, but Peter Herman, Mariska Hargitay's husband, said a really smart thing. He said, if you're going to get married to have the other person make you happy, you'll fail. Mm-hmm. But what you build together, within that, what you build, will come happiness. That is, I think, a really clear, clean way of saying what it takes to be happy. It's what you build together that will make you happy. Not each person has to make, he's not responsible to make me happy, and I'm not responsible to make him happy, though I want to make him happy, and he wants to make me happy, but I can't expect him to do it for me.
Right.
That's a very important thing.
Romance in the popular culture means, oh, baby, you're my everything. Nobody can be somebody's everything. So don't look for that. It's, that's a long tunnel with very little light at the end. You're just going to be spending a lot of time
trying to make that person give you what you think you need. That's exactly right. You're not going to get every single thing you need from that other person. There are some things you're going to have to allow them not to be able to give you. Allow them to just be who they are. He's never going to be a guy that's going to get as panicked and as excited as I am over a situation. He's going to be laid back about it. And I could say to him, you've got to get upset about this. It isn't going to happen. He's going to be that, and I'm going to be this. And I think that when you learn that from each other, you step back and say, okay, but what is her name? Viola Davis said, your marriage doesn't start the day you walk down the aisle and have those vows together. Your marriage starts when you look across the breakfast table and say, what he's doing right now is annoying me more than anybody else in the world has ever annoyed me. But okay, I still love him. That's it. Don't say, oh, but I'm going to have to beat him of that. I'm going to have to break him of that habit. That's it. She also said, Viola said another thing. She said, I went into marriage thinking it was 50-50, but it's not. It's 100-100. You got to give it all. And he has to give it all too. And if you give your all, you will make each other happy.
All right, our final question is a two-part question. The first part is there a couple you would have liked to interview that you could not?
The Obamas. We really wanted to interview Michelle and Barack Obama. We both really appreciate their marriage. And, presidents and first ladies get so much, looking scrutiny on them, as we know all famous people do. But they really seem to have it together, and they were attracted to each other. They were true to each other. They loved each other. I really liked it. We also wanted to interview Laura and George Bush. The Obamas didn't want to do it because they said everybody that ever worked for them is writing a book, and if they were interviewed for our book, they have to be interviewed for everybody they know. so they didn't do it. Though she's been a wonderful person. She's come to St. Jude and been really great. Laura and George, Laura was in another book of mine, but they just didn't want to talk about their marriage. And that a lot of people don't want to do that. And it doesn't mean their marriage isn't good. They're just not comfortable talking about it. It's too private. And that's fine. But there are two couples that we would have liked to have had in the book.
All right, and the final question is for you, Phil. If we could reprise the Donahue show today, who would be your must-get guest you would like to talk to?
Donald Trump. And that's,
He didn't even think about it.
Marlo and I, one of the first fights we had was I was about to have Phyllis Schlafly.
Oh, I could have killed him.
On my show.
In the middle of the ERA fight, we only needed one state. We needed either Illinois, Georgia, or Florida. And the vote was coming up in Illinois. And Bella Abzug calls me and says, Phil's going to put Phyllis Schlafly on the week of the vote. And I said, what? And I went to Phil and I said, you're going to put on Phyllis Schlafly the week of the vote? And he said to me, and we'd only been married a year or so, and he said, if you don't understand why I have to put Phyllis on the week of the vote, then you don't understand what I do. And wow, that was, talk about having to accommodate somebody else. I had to accommodate that his work was his work. And me and my friends who believed in something else, had no place in telling him who we should be interviewing. But how does that answer this question? Oh, who would you want to interview now? You're saying Donald Trump.
Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you had Donald Trump on your show
3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was always available.
I don't think he'd be available now.
No. But
and not to a liberal like you.
Yeah. Has so much. I have a big grievance about so-called mainstream media because it's Trump, Trump, Trump all day long, and I'm thinking, what news isn't being covered? Because we're so fixated, and that I have to acknowledge that if I had a show, I would want Trump, Trump, Trump too.
Well, right now it's not so much Trump as it is the virus. I mean, that's what's
true.
kind of, sad. We have lost one friend, an actor named Mark Blum, who I had done 2 plays with. He died of the virus. Another woman, an actress that I work with, Julia Brothers, she has it. Tony Shuib and his wife both had it, getting over it. Ali Wentworth and George Stephanopoulos. We know several people who've had the virus. Thankfully, only this one friend who died of it. But this is a terrible, terrible plague, and we've taken it very seriously. We really haven't left our apartment except to get a little walk in the park. But we've gone nowhere. Our food is delivered. Our groceries are delivered. We haven't had any people in the apartment. We've been very careful, and we've scrubbed down all the bags that come with Clorox, and it's exhausting. I hate the day the groceries come because we're so busy Cloroxing everything. The other day, what did you say about that onion you were peeling? You said,
yeah, I was dicing an onion.
Right.
And I said, this onion smells like Clorox.
I don't doubt it.
So
I don't
it's a
doubt
nice
it.
way to open a meal.
I know. Anyway, we're doing our best to be responsible to ourselves and being responsible to everybody around us by not, by doing our social distancing and wearing our masks when we go to the park. We're being very careful.
Well, it's been a delight having you on Live Talks Los Angeles. Congratulations again on 40 years of marriage. The book again is What Makes a Marriage Last, 40 Celebrated Couples. Share with us the secrets to a happy life. It is available where books are sold, and we encourage our viewers to visit bookshop.org to purchase the book and support independent bookstores. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks
you
so
very much.
Thank you.